The F5 Local Traffic Manager, Big IP Initial Setup Configuration. This is the part we're going to get in and actually start playing with the equipment and really get started here. Okay, so put all those pieces together and see how it all works, both physically and virtually. So configuration-wise, we want to get in and, of course, play with the boxes. I know, I'm sitting here still talking to you and we see the same graphics again. We'll get there. Just patience, Grasshopper. Now, when we start looking at this, like we said before, there's multiple ways of going in and configuring. So the LCD panel, the serial configuration portion, as well as the GUI where we do most of our stuff throughout the course. Okay, we're going to be looking at this on what we have available to us. Obviously, the LCD and the serial config are going to be purely for our physical devices. We do have a we'll call it root access or kind of serial, as if we were physically there on the VM. Roughly the same thing that we can do, but we certainly have the GUI interface on both the virtual machine side and on the physical box. So we're going to look at doing the setups for both the physical and the virtual side of things and see exactly how it's done. Okay. Great thing is, same concepts, different device. We know what those important pieces are. Okay, we're using all of this really to get right here. We're assuming that not everybody is going to use that same 192.168.1.245 address for every controller on your network, because of course that makes no sense at all. So we do need to get in there to configure our own IPs to set the basics up so that we can move forward and actually do our administration. So as we kind of move in, well, for the kill here, but this is all going into the LCD panel of my 1600 or a physical box. Now notice the 4 little buttons on there for, up, down, left, right. That can be important to it. There's a select button in the middle, and then the backwards or cancel button on the bottom left there. Okay. So we see the information come up. We've got options, system, and screens. System's the main one we want to look at. Okay. So management or serial speed are going to be our 2 primary things. Okay. So serial speed, if we want to do our console into it, good thing to check out. Remember, the default is 19,200. I happen to have changed this to 9600 baud because that's what my terminal servers are set for. So went ahead and checked that. Otherwise, we can set the management IP address here, mask and gateway. Everything can be done with our arrow keys as we get into it. Okay, so just kind of see the different things and commit, obviously the important part. But anything we want to change on there, if we don't like the address, just use the arrow keys. Or escape up if it's all perfectly cool. Check out the mask, make sure it's all good. /23, good for my lab network here. Escape up, gateway, make sure we get that set. This way we can manage off network as well. You don't have to have it, it's not required, but if you're going to manage off of a network via layer 3, then it is good. So other things that we can kind of look at as we scroll down there, reboot, halt, you can do a net boot on the box, you can do a lot of things from having physical access. Back up to the main, we've got the screens and options. This shows how the LCD will actually work. Okay. So when we start looking at the different things on there, like the screens as an example, show the date, show the information, show the software version that's on there, and I can check it on or off. All are checked right now. For the options, we got a couple other things in terms of like my heartbeat or the backlight version of the LCD. Can change the contrast, can change the brightness levels. So little things as far as, again, how that LCD operates, what I want it to say. Otherwise, this tells me exactly what's going on with it. I can see what's happening all from that perfectly good stuff. So the next thing that we want to kind of look at on here is our serial side of things. Okay, so keep in mind that I got, how did I get in here? I have a terminal server set up, so that's kind of my version of connecting to the serial. But if we did the same thing with a laptop directly in the serial, this is what we would see for console port type login. Okay, so this gives me the information on here, and we'll see that once I already have the system name, by default there wouldn't be one here, but you get to log in the information. Now, what was that default setup that we had? So it's going to be root from here, and then that password was default. Okay? So everything that you're going to have on there is going to be set and really gives us stuff to do. Now, we are on a Unix system. Okay, so by default, I'm going to see, well, different things. Okay, some of the directories, some of the files on here. A lot of this stuff, short answer, don't touch it. Okay, especially if you don't know what it is, you can definitely go in and hose things, and you really don't want to do that part. Now, what we can do from here is simply run a config script. Okay, now that's not actually in this directory, it's in a different one, but we'll call it. And this is the way that we can go in and check out, again, our IP address netmask default route only gives us enough power, if you will, to get in and set the basics that we can then go into the GUI. Okay, so if I want to do this, go ahead and hit OK, perfectly fine for it, and it'll come through and review what there is currently set up. So remember, right now, I may or may not have network access depending on whether this network makes any sense to me or not. Okay, so do I want to use automatic configuration? That would be DHCP. So I'm going to answer no for this. It will go through, prompt me for the IP address that I can statically define. I'd actually already done this before, so this is perfectly cool. Same thing with the netmask, it's a /23 on my lab networking here, so that part is fine. It'll ask me or prompt me about the default route. So this is required, like I said, if you're going to manage from a different subnet. You need to know where to go, how to get out for it. It tells me what the current one is. Do I want to set it up? Go ahead and say yes. We'll really leave it at the current, just click OK on it because that is my router. So review the stuff, accept these settings, life is perfectly cool, and at this point, especially if we've changed anything on here, then we should be able to go back into our browser and find where our configuration is. Now at the same time, it does tell us right here, these files, that it actually has manipulated what happens to have changed in here. So this gives you kind of an indication of the file structure or configuration structure for what kinds of things we're going to run into. We will be talking about that throughout the course, about different files, different configuration portions, but for right now, this is the only thing that we need to do on the console port. Alright, so really once we get to this point, we are able to go out to our website. Okay, so 10.10.100.202 would be the address that I have. Depending on the browser you use, it will get a little irritated with you because it is going to be a self-signed certificate. So security settings, you may have to adjust your profiles or whatever, but you know, click on enough stuff and eventually you'll get to it. Okay, remember our login here is admin. So those are the defaults for everything. Click on login, and we'll get into really the meat and potatoes of everything that we're going to be doing. We will spend a lot of time in here throughout different things, but right now, all I want to get to is in the system and license portion to kind of see a summary of where we're at right now. Now, on this particular box, it already has a production license on it. Okay? So there's really nothing that I need to do unless I'm going to add to it. Okay, so I can actually reactivate if I want to contact the license server, but otherwise it gives me an idea as far as what things that I have set up on here, what I'm able to do on here as far as what my license actually goes. Now, after we do this, okay, so once we get our license and have that wonderful, what was that again, the dossier, all configured for us, that's what brings me next to resource provisioning. Okay, so again, once I get the personality of my box, now you'll notice here that I can do a lot of things. So not just local traffic manager, but I can be an IPv6 gateway, I can do rate shaping, I can do compression, I can do antivirus stuff, I can do firewall stuff, I can do SSL stuff. There's a lot of things that I could do on here, many of which, by the way, are beyond the scope of our initial class, but what do I want it to do? And that's where resource provisioning is going to come into play. Okay? Because like everything, depending on, of course, the specific physical hardware that I have a limit of how much CPU, disk space, and memory that there happens to be. Okay, so this is about a 4 gig box in terms of RAM. The CPU is a single quad-core CPU, as I recall. You know, not the best, not the fastest thing in the world, but it's the low end out of my physical boxes. So in terms of that throughput, in terms of its capabilities, here's where I balance all the different things that I have. Okay? So right now, all the stuff happens to be disabled, so it's all based on what I've chosen anyway. And each thing, we have a few different choices. Okay, so our dedicated, nominal, minimum, and none are really the primary pieces that we'd go in here and take a look at. So if I wanted this box to only do LTM, then I'd put it as dedicated. All right, generally speaking, nominal is where we're going to want to be. This will also give me some capability as far as balancing on here as well. So my reporting, if I wanted to do that, I'll go ahead and allow that as well. Set them both as nominal because those are, like it says right here, the licensed modules. All right, so I can go ahead and update Tells me what I'm doing. Yeah, restart the daemons, blah, blah, blah. Yes, okay. If this is a production network, you obviously don't want to do this other than in a maintenance window. But right here, we're doing things in lab, so I can do whatever it is that I want to. Right. So now it'll tell me right here everything's been updated, features, functionality, some stuff has changed, so wait while it changes and verifies everything, and it'll actually kick us back into it so that we can verify these things ourselves or see what those differences happen to be. Alright, so everything in there, about 1 minute 29 seconds for the verification, tells me that everything's been done in there and that I can continue. If a reboot was necessary at that point, then it would have told me that as well. Noticing here the differences in terms of the memory allocation. So now that I have, and again, all color-coded, which is kind of cool for stuff, I have the information that we're balancing out, and it tells me CPU usage on here. It tells me, TMM being my memory, normal memory manager, my management module, AVR being my visibility and reporting module. So all the things that we have tells us what that balance happens to be in there. So that's kind of the cool thing as far as I can see what's going on with the system. But that, for right now, gives me my provisioning status for what we're going to do with it, and this is our starting point. Again, that was my physical box. Now let's go to some of the virtual ones. We'll go ahead and set up a VM, and we'll kind of go through the same steps and see what we can configure on those to get us up and running with a virtualized machine as well. Alright, so let's go ahead and build some stuff here. Get my wonderful ESXi server set up, running on a great little Mac Mini. Okay, so all the cool things that we have going on right here. And let's see, file and deploy an OVF template. Okay, and I already got kind of selected in here, so this is one that I can download from F5's website. So you can actually get trial license and do all the fun stuff down there, but they'll be able to download that OVA on there. And it'll really tell you what it is that you need, how much CPU it's going to be, thin provisioning, and all the other stuff that goes along with it, just so you know how it is to fit on your particular server. So go ahead and accept the license. Yep, all the fun stuff that goes with that. Next, name of it is going to be, let's see, what are we going to call it? We'll call it VE1. I'll do that. Okay, 2 CPUs, 4 gig, perfectly fine. Again, that's the default on there, so we'll go ahead and leave it at that. What the storage space happens to be, let's do just thin provision for right now. That was the 2.5 gig. So I don't want to get too big for it. Because really I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of logging on here, so all of this stuff as it is. And we can rearrange what our networks are going to be as well when we get down to it. Yeah, so it is just giving us a warning right now that multiple things are mapped to the same network. We can go ahead and change that later. Right now, just go ahead and complete it. I'll say power on after deployment. It's creating it, and all the fun stuff that goes with that. So successful completion there. We have a VM. Should be powering it up at this point, so that's a cool thing. So we are powered on. That's always a great deal. So let's go ahead and go into console on here. Alright, you can watch the boot up stuff. Again, Unix system, all the fun things in case you ever cared to do that. But as soon as it gives us a login prompt, we'll really go through the same steps that we did before in terms of looking at what the console port was, that serial connection on the physical box. That'll be exactly the same thing as what we're accomplishing here on this file system. So we have our login prompt on here. It says good stuff. So root. Nope. I have to click on here first. Root. Default. And we are in here. It does tell us, by the way, that there's no license on there. Okay. All right. Apparently I have to wait for the daemons to start running. So I guess give it a few moments, and then we can go ahead and just type in our config file again. Our config command. And let's see if we have it. There we go. Alright, so it can do this, use an IP address, just like we did before. It did do DHCP by default, so I'm going to go ahead and tell it no. So we can modify this address. My last one was 202, I've got 203 set up on here. Click OK. The mask is perfectly fine, and the gateway, perfectly cool for that. Alright, and review and say yes. Alright, and we are back out. Should be able to get there. I can go ahead and type exit at that point in time, and realistically I can go out to my browser and would then be able to tell us where it is that we're going. Cursor back. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I'm not too worried about that. Control T anyway. 3. Yes, I know, don't like it, go ahead and proceed. Alright, okay, and it does tell us that the configuration utility is actually starting. Okay, so we got things pulling up, and admin here, and again we'll see the same type of setup that we had before. Well, I guess a little bit different in here because we must complete the setup utility. Notice that a file shows up here that no license exists for this device. Right? So right now it's telling us that we're going to be in an unlicensed state. So all the fun things that we have, we do want to go ahead and activate this stuff, get the information for us, and really see whether or not we've applied anything previously. Alright, now we've really got a couple ways that we can actually go about doing this here, but let's go ahead and click on Activate. Okay, so base registration key. Now, one of the things that we've done, or should have done at this point, is gone to, where are we at? www.f5.com/trial. Okay, that's where we get all of our download information anyway, but that's also where we can apply for a license key. Okay, so that's going to be kind of the, well, key part. Okay, forgive the pun on that one, but that's going to be the important thing that we need here, a base registration key, kind of like it says right here, in order to get started for it. Then we're going to go ahead and go through, I guess we can try it automatic. We'll see. I don't know whether I've set everything up yet or not for it, but otherwise we can do it manual and go ahead and take our dossier information over to the website. So on their website for doing the dossier, instead of the www would be license.f5.com. And that's where I'll actually paste that information. It'll give me back an activation key that I will then need in order to come in here and finish this stuff off. Okay, so those are kind of ways that we can go through and do the stuff on here. So let's see what we have in terms of our base setup. Okay, so my base registration key, all the entirely fun things about typing this in. Alright, so those should be my base keys. That's a lab license. That's all the cool things there. Let's go ahead and try our automatic one since I do have default gateway set up. Go ahead and click Next. Okay, receiving all the EULA, blah, blah, blah. Go ahead and accept it. I mean, you can really read it if you feel like doing that, but either way, you have to accept it. So if you would like it to work, then that will be the way that you'll go ahead and do it. All right, that we went ahead and accepted that already. Okay, there we go. So configuration has changed. It's going to go ahead and do the same thing. Once it gets its license information, sends the dossier, pulls everything back, it'll tell us that, well, basically we have to go ahead and get in here. So it is resetting everything. Let's go ahead and log back in. So, whoops, we'll want to take the caps lock back off. Okay, so admin. And, in theory, we should be licensed now. Dun dun dun! Okay, excellent. So we show our status right here as being licensed. I mean, interesting thing again, going to a lab license, we have a whole lot of things. So you remember all the modules and stuff that we had on the physical unit was not licensed for all these cool things. They were optional ones, but we would have had to go back and get extra keys for. On a lab license, you're licensed for a whole lot of stuff. So the catch is you have to then determine how you're going to provision this and how you're going to set it up, because certainly it's going to be indicative of how much space it's going to take in your VM and really what it's going to do and everything else like that. So really for right now, I think we'll keep the defaults small in the management. We don't need to do any CGNAT stuff. That's for IPv6. Cool feature, by the way, but completely different concept. So we'll stick with our LTM, the local traffic manager on there. We'll leave the AVR off. Even though we are licensed for it, we'll just go ahead and kind of leave that as it is. So go ahead and click through Next. Our resources have been provisioned, all the information right there, of course, and we can go through it and pull our certificates. We'll talk about all of those things in a future nugget here, but just keep going through Next until it tells you this right here, activation complete. This is the most important thing, that now we can actually go configure our platform, do all the things that we're supposed to be doing, and have a fully functional virtual machine at this point. Alright, well, we have kind of gone through the important pieces on both my physical and my virtual editions of F5 for getting ready for deployment. Okay, so our initial setup, we certainly needed the IP and mask and gateway information. Those were really the most important things in order to get me to the GUI. Right, and that most important thing then after that was, as we saw when we did the virtual edition anyway, the license. Okay, the license, which then allowed us to provision things and decide how it was that the actual box was going to be set up. So either way we went through, my physical box had a license already, so I was able to take advantage of that. My virtual machine, we saw the process that we had to go through from the automatic setup. We might go back later and go ahead and do one for manual as well. But, you know, the license to get the dossier, to get the license key back, to give me the information so that I could provision the system on there. And that gets us to where we need to be in order to start moving forward into the concepts of what my load balancer is now going to do for me and for my applications. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.